Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Everyone, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace be upon you all and welcome to the channel. In this video, we will cover Webpack for Angular. I know it has been a while since I released videos on the channel, but to be quite honest, after recording almost 670 videos, I felt demotivated to continue because I felt exhausted from recording constantly and consistently, to be frank. So that is why I took a break. But now I am slowly returning to my pattern, inshallah, bi'idhnillah, and God willing, because it is important for me to actually release beneficial content for the audience, whether it is scientific or social content. And alhamdulillah, after what happened to me this past Saturday, I have become reinvigorated, thankfully. Though I was bombarded with many news and I faced many events, I feel much more motivated now than before because of what transpired on Saturday. It was a cascade of events, unfortunately. And I say unfortunately because it was a bombardment, not because the events were terrible. Perhaps some people involved in the events were terrible, but not the events themselves, alhamdulillah, and thank God. So I am slowly resuming the lessons that I would like to publish on the channel. That way people that wish to learn could benefit from this channel, inshallah, bi'idhnillah, and God willing. Now, continuing with the Angular tutorials, before we continue or before we start coding in Angular, I would like to discuss Webpack. Webpack is installed with the Angular CLI. When you install the Angular CLI, Webpack is also installed. What is Webpack and what is its importance? This will help you understand the hierarchy of the files in any Angular project, and I believe React also uses Webpack. If I recall correctly, I could be mistaken. I never use React, to be quite honest. Angular is far superior, at least from my perspective. Web indicates that this program is related to web development in one form or another. Pack, oh, for goodness sake, Pack is the truncated form of packager. Or if you would like to call it package manager, it is up to you. But it is responsible for the management of your packages in Angular. The precise term which I believe encompasses the functionality of Webpack accurately would be, instead of this, you can refer to it as a module bundler. It bundles all the modules in your project. If you wish to refer to them as packages instead of modules, it truly does not matter. What matters is the concept. It does not matter if you refer to it as a module or a package, as long as you understand the concept. This is what Webpack is responsible for. Firstly, we will discuss the structure of the systems of files in a traditional web-based application with JavaScript or vanilla JavaScript without any frameworks, CSS, and HTML. Normally, when you create a project or a web application using HTML, your home page or your main page will always be labeled as index.html. This is the starting point of any web application. However, in an Angular project, we do not use that, and I will explain why shortly. Then you have within the index.html file or any HTML file, you will have JavaScript files. I will call it main.js, mainly, pun intended, but mainly because in compiled languages, you always have the main method that begins any program, whether it is Java, C, or C++. I do not know about other languages such as Rust, for example, or Go. I am not familiar with those languages. I do not even know if they are compiled or interpreted languages, as with JavaScript and Python, and Ruby, those are interpreted languages. Your JavaScript files will contain JavaScript code, and your CSS files, you can obviously have more than one CSS file and more than one JS file in your project. This will contain the styling code or the styling sheet, however you wish to label it, because some people do not consider CSS as a programmatic language. Truly, it is not, but with the modifications in CSS that took place in the later versions, it does appear to be a language to a degree. Regardless of how you view it, it truly does not matter. CSS is only used for stylizing your web pages. And JavaScript adds the functionality of that web page. Now, in an Angular project, actually, I will... I forgot what it was called. CD University, I believe. Okay. Now, if we look at the Angular project that we created earlier, wait, Maven W. Oh, I believe this is for the Spring Boot. Oh man, okay, this is for the Spring Boot tutorial. CD students, perhaps? Oh, okay. This is the Angular project. Now, if you look at the Angular project, this is, not now, tab 9, this is the structure of the files in Angular. We will not cover any of these yet until they become important, then we will discuss them. For now, we do not need to discuss them. What you will mainly focus on would be under source code or SRC. Now you see here, we have index.html, main.ts, and style.css, but you will not touch those either. Everything pertaining to the Angular project will be under app. You can obviously create subfolders, but you will create them inside app. This will be the main directory in which all the necessary files related to your project will be located. Unless you create a folder containing assets such as audio, music, for example, or videos or images, you may place that folder elsewhere. But other than that, everything related to Angular will be placed inside the app folder, which means that you will only be focusing on these files or similar files that you create. We will cover components in the upcoming video بإذن and God willing. Since we will not touch these, even though these are the files that are necessary for any web application, since we know the index.html file is the starting point for any web application, why do we ignore these three pillars of any web application and focus on the app folder? It is because of Webpack. Other than the fact that Webpack contains an ahead-of-time compiler, which expedites the process of compilation when starting an Angular project, as in starting it, as in serving it or launching the website, and also preparing any adjuvant material stored within the code, such as images, music, videos, and so on and so forth. Webpack transforms and consolidates all HTML files contained within the app folder into the index.html folder. It places any and all HTML folders you create within the app folder into the index.html. That is the responsibility of Webpack, which is why when you launch your Angular project, you are technically launching it from index.html through Webpack. Webpack assists with that. What else does Webpack serve? It also converts, as you can see here, the code, you have code here for TypeScript. But with web applications, we normally use JavaScript. Webpack also does the conversion for you from TypeScript code. TypeScript is a compiled language. It converts it to JavaScript, which is the intermediary. Every single compiled language has an intermediary file, which is then executed to give you the runtime. In Java, you start with .java, then .class, then the runtime. In C, you have .c, then .out, or in Linux, I believe it is .a, if I recall correctly, then the runtime. C++, it is .cpp, then .out or .a again, and then runtime, and so on and so forth. Interpreted languages skip this part. They only begin from here, such as Python, JavaScript, and Ruby. But with compiled languages, you have three components or three factors if you will consider runtime as a factor. But in terms of files, you only have two. The source code, which is written in human readable language, and the intermediary. Webpack is responsible for this part as well as this part, but mainly this part. Because web browsers understand JavaScript, though technically with Node.js you can use TypeScript as well, which is why here you see main.ts. I believe in the past, it has been a while since I worked with Angular, but I believe in the past this used to be main.js. And Webpack would convert all of your TypeScript code into JavaScript and place it in this file here. I could be mistaken. Honestly, I do not remember Angular as I used to in the past, sadly. So I could be mistaken. And lastly, we have CSS. All your CSS files in your app folder will also be consolidated into one CSS file, which is this one, through Webpack. Well, what if you are using a CSS preprocessor, such as SASS or SAS, as I enjoy calling it? Webpack converts that to CSS, and after converting it to CSS, it adds it or consolidates it or unifies your CSS files into a single CSS file. You have to keep in mind that in an Angular application, you will have multiple HTML files, multiple TypeScript files, and multiple CSS files. But here you only have one HTML file, one TS or JS file, and one CSS file, which means that Webpack bundles or packages everything for you and consolidates all the necessary files into their respective main files. That is why when we create a project in Angular, we never touch any of these. We only work inside this folder, the application folder. Webpack handles the consolidation or the compilation or the conversion, however you wish to label it, for us. And then it launches or deploys your project or application. That is why without Webpack, you cannot use Angular. You have to use Webpack with Angular, and it is installed alongside Angular. So if you install the Angular CLI, you will have Webpack as well. And from the previous video, you have seen that I updated the Angular version to 19 because I noticed that 20 will be released soon, unless it has been released. I have not been apprising myself of the developments, sadly. And with 20, if I recall correctly, they were going to redesign the structure or the hierarchy of the files. So it is always best to familiarize myself with the latest developments. That way I can assist you in learning these newer features as quickly as possible. However, for the purposes of the Angular tutorial, or rather for the purposes this headset is annoying. For the purposes of the basics of Angular, we do not truly need to upgrade or update to Angular 2019 would suffice. But I had to update to 19 because if I recall correctly, they changed the signals, how signals are used in Angular, if I recall correctly, but also how to use the at_for and the at_let, though I believe those were added in Angular 18, not necessarily 19. I believe it was just signals. Oh, and there was I believe it was an update related to observables or subscriptions. I honestly do not remember. But 19 had amazing features added to it. With 20, the main update that I remember would be the changes in the file names, if I recall correctly, or the changes in the hierarchy of the folders. So that is not necessary for us to learn now. Later on, yes, inshallah, we will update to Angular 20 bi'ithnillah and God willing. For now, I just wanted you to know the purpose of Webpack and why we will not work with these even though we need to in any traditional web application. With Angular, we will create all of our necessary files here, and then Webpack will handle the consolidation and conversion accordingly. And if we look at the index.html file here, you will see app root, this HTML tag app root in the body right here. So this is basically the web application itself. Now, where is this HTML tag? This is not part of HTML, by the way. This is a custom HTML tag. How was it created? Where can I find this HTML if it is not part of the main library of HTML? If we look at this TypeScript file, which controls this HTML file, and this HTML file will use styling from this CSS file, you will see here selector as in HTML tag app root. So you can actually provide a name for the HTML tag that is related to this web page right here, this gigantic mess. This is created for you automatically whenever you create a new Angular project, by the way. I did not code any of this, and quite frankly, I would never code any of this because this is too much. Especially with all the pink and purple. For goodness sake, use masculine colors for anyways. So this web page here that you see, let us launch it in gserve. Okay, I believe it is running. Let us use this. Local host. You see it right there. This is the HTML page that is contained here, but we need to launch it from HTML, from the index.html. It is right here. This tag represents this HTML code, which is labeled as app root in the respective TypeScript file of this HTML, and you can see it here. This TypeScript file is connected to template refers to HTML template. It is connected to this file, and style refers to the CSS file it is connected to. And that is it for this video. Inshallah bi'idhnillah, and God willing, afterwards we will start creating files and subfolders within the app folder to actually design our own application. And we will begin by simply defining what a component means, and we will design a simple component to help you understand what components are used for. And that is it for this video. I hope this lecture was helpful and beneficial to you all. Enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. Be safe, take care, and peace be upon you all. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.